Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, morimili wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. And please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Himalaya, Ghana, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Dani Resh. She's here to celebrate her great middle grade fantasy series, Compass to Vinland, Clarity of Sight. Before we invite Dani into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Giggles and Joy, the wonderful picture book series by Ariane de Bonvoisin. Giggles and Joy is an exciting new book series focusing on sharing spiritual life lessons for kids aged 2 to 10. It is all for the kids, parents, grandparents, caregivers, and teachers of this world. There are 3 books in the series, Giggles and Joy, You Are Loved, and Being You. And each book has 8 poems. Some are short, some are long, some rhyme, some don't. They are positive, lighthearted, and will have a lasting effect on the child's mind. They are universal in nature and will exist alongside any religion. Goldie Hawn, yes, that Goldie Hawn, Hollywood star and founder of Mind Up, she says that these books are a gift to kids and to the entire world. These books belong in every family classroom and school library. Get your copy today at gigglesandjoy.com. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is also brought to you by Mysterious. Book number 1, Escape from Grimstone Manor, written by our friend Matt McMahon. Mysterious by Matt McMahon is a spooky middle grade series featuring monsters and mysteries. This series is ideal for fans of Goosebumps, Stranger Things, and Five Nights at Freddy's. Mysterious books are short. They're great for both reluctant readers and avid readers. They can be read in any order. Each book is a standalone adventure with a unique cast of diverse characters. The books are targeted at ages 8 to 12, but everybody loves them from like 8 to 88. Every book features cliffhanger chapter endings that keep kids and adults turning the pages. And check it out, they publish quickly in both paperback and hardcover. 3 books are already out, with a 4th book coming in January. You're going to love Mysterious. You're going to get so addicted so quickly. Mysterious book number 1, Escape from Grimstone Manor by Matt McMahon. Join us right now from the great state of Michigan. Our guest is here today to celebrate her middle grade novel. It's called Compass to Vinland, Clarity of Sight. Please welcome to the show, Dani Resh. Hey, Dani, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Nice to be here.
I'm delighted that you are here. Tell us all about Compass to Vinland, please.
Okay, well, Compass to Vinland, it's the first book in a series called the Magic Shoe series. This series revolves around 3 middle school aged children, and all 3 of them in different ways are dealing with feelings of isolation and loneliness. Their worlds kind of collide, and they end up finding 3 pairs of magical shoes, each intended for them, and it gives each of them different powers and abilities, and that kind of propels them on a fantastical adventure. And along the way, it's a lot more, it's about self-discovery, I would say.
Fascinating. What a neat idea of finding some magical shoes that are meant just for them, that transport them on an adventure.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can all harken back to to Dorothy and her magic shoes. I mean, it seems like there's a history of that. And I liked how it was kind of implied in The Wizard of Oz that the magic was in her all along. So I kind of am going off of that a little bit.
Yeah. Any houses landing on evil witches in the Compass to Vinland?
I mean, there's definitely villains. They're not necessarily witches. Vinland in the story is a mythological land that is full of a lot of different entities, and some of them have been banished. And they are called drainers, and they're trying to get back there. So I'm getting a little bit off topic, but there are definitely villains in this story.
What is it? Because I remember back, even though it was centuries ago, but back to being in middle school and really being fascinated with monsters. And, I remember touring a cavern system with my family. And while everybody was learning about the stalactites and the stalagmites, I'm envisioning like creatures up in the rock crevices and everything. And that was just seemed so cool for me. Why do you think middle grade kids are so into that kind of creepy, scary world?
I think, there's something about kind of facing your fears, and it kind of embodies a monster and being able to kind of combat it and come out victorious, perhaps. I think I agree. I've always been kind of like, what's lurking behind the shadows when I was younger. So I can see your point there.
That's interesting. The idea that we get to slay the monsters in fiction and in our imaginations. Because when you think about it, from a kid's point of view, a kid in middle school, they're dealing with lots of monsters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. From the bullies that they're interacting with every day to just the idea of growing up and this new person that they're becoming. I'm imagining it can be a very kind of intimidating world sometimes.
Yeah, and I think in what's developed in my series is that the monsters can be as simple as people placing labels on you and how you take on that persona, even not meaning to. So all three of them are dealing with Ren, who's one of the characters in the first book. It's told from his perspective in the first book. He's kind of an oddity. He lives in a house that literally looks like a shoe. So people think he's a very strange person. And he ended up isolating himself. And he just kind of stays within his house. He's a gardener. He has all these crows that bring him things. In the second book, Maria can actually read people's minds. But it's not as cool as it sounds, because then as an impressionable middle schooler, she can see if people think, oh, her hair's too curly or this or that. And so it really wears on her self-esteem. And then Rusty kind of comes from a pretty, a family that has a lot of issues. So he's kind of considered, he can't rise above the reputation of his family. So they all get labels placed on them, and those are kind of the monsters. And they're trying desperately to repel them and not have them absorb in being who they are. So I think that was, in the end, that ended up being the monster of the book.
What a fascinating idea. And you're right. People are so quick to try to put labels on us, even if they're kind of good labels. And a lot of times I think, especially now, we seem to be living in a world where we're putting labels on ourselves. We're Republicans, we're Democrats, we're conservative, we're liberal, we're this, we're that. And I'm not a big fan of labels for myself, that's for sure.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither at all. So, and I think they can be dangerous. I think they can kind of change your trajectory of your life sometimes. I mean, it's easy to believe things if you hear it enough. So the book is about just really figuring out who you are and staying true to that and just pushing out the noise.
What was it that inspired you to write this series?
I think, well, there were two things, but one being, I do find that in my own experience with younger people in my life, they do seem to be yearning for a connection and not knowing how to go about getting it and feeling isolated. So that's why I kind of had my three characters trying to work through those feelings of wanting something but not knowing how to get there, and being afraid of being ridiculed or bullied, so kind of retreating. So I think it was a combination of two things. One being, I think the kids of this generation deserve a fantastical adventure like I experienced when I was young, like Star Wars or Indiana Jones. I think there's such a need for that because there's such heavy things going on in the world, but also to accompany it with something, with characters that they maybe can identify with, and they're struggling with some of the same things they are to overcome.
Isn't it interesting that we're living in a time where we're, at least on paper, we're more connected than ever.
Right.
But it seems that we're still struggling to be truly connected to others.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem authentic a lot of the time. So I think people are struggling with authenticity.
Yeah. Because you're obviously a much deeper thinker than I am. What was it that helped you kind of acknowledge that hey, kids are really looking for authentic relationships and connections these days?
I just think I've seen it with people in my lives or talking to other parents. It seems to a lot of parents I've talked to are experiencing the same things with their kids, the same worry, like imagining how our relationships develop naturally. And I don't know if I see that as much anymore. It seems like there's a little more apprehension about exposing their true selves, judgment. I don't know this is just my personal experience in people in my life. So I don't want to make a broad statement about other people's experiences in any way. But I just wanted to focus on people I know that have experienced those things and how to get back to that, how to be open to the possibility that you can have close connections with people if you allow yourself to go there.
Yeah. Did you always imagine yourself writing kids' books?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story that relates right back to this. I always wrote when I was really young. And then when I was about 10 or 11, I was in a car accident and had a closed head injury. And that, of course, led to multiple testings and things like that. And I was told by doctors that I was going to be like linguistically challenged. So I, in my head, told myself at a very young age that, okay, you've always wanted to be a writer, but you're not going to be a writer because you don't have the ability to do that. So then I dived into art, and I ended up going on to art school and graduate school and studied art. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s with my kids, like reading stories with them, that I was like, why did I let this label be put on me? And I just said, I'm just going to start writing and see what happens. And then before I knew it, my second book is coming out next month. So I just kind of embraced it. But that's why I think it's so important for younger people, because I was at a very impressionable age. I was, like 11 or 12, and you go, okay, well, an adult said this about me, so it must be true. So I think the message in this book is definitely just to not listen to labels. And like I knew back then, I could do this, I can write. But I didn't listen to my inner voice. I listened to an exterior voice. Good for you.
Where do you think you found the strength to kind of I know you get a white coat and everything, Doc, but I'm going to believe myself. I know that I can do this.
Well, I think it took many years, too many years for that to happen. But I think you get to a point in your life where you just have a burning need for something, and you just kind of say, no, I just got to do it. Yeah. So it just came to that point in my life.
And what is it about this audience that kind of pushed you to like really make these books happen?
I think it's the fantastical nature of things like Harry Potter, or just to be able to enter worlds that are limitless and fun, and not deal with serious issues, but also just enjoy the ride. Mm-hmm. So I think I just really like that age. I like who they are. I like that they're figuring out who they are and they're not stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is a fun thing about kids in those middle grade years. They are fun. They are exploring. They're open to different ideas. And, and they haven't made those, they haven't let the outside world that tells them, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, really affect them as much as kids when they get a little bit older.
Yeah. And I think they do need stories. I mean, I think they can really dive into stories, and it means a lot to them. I feel like, a story that they can really connect with, they might take with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. You mentioned Wizard of Oz, Indiana Jones, Star Wars. Are there other stories, movies, books that inspired you?
I mean, I just feel like I get inspired by everything. I get inspired by history. I get inspired by travel. I love folklore. I love mythology. I touch on a lot of Norse mythology in this, but also one of my characters is like an Inuit mythological character. So I love exploring all sorts of different. I find inspiration all over the place.
Yeah. Hey, I have to ask you this. I love to ask this question to authors of fantasy, authors that are creating their own kind of universe. How do you keep things? Because I have a hard time. If I'm reading a Stephen King novel and we're in this bizarre, the last one I listened to the story was called Fairy Tales, I think. And it was.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it was great. 25 hours long listen. So it was great as I drove across the country. But there were these worlds, and there was this different law of physics and the different worlds that we were traveling to. And I'm always amazed that authors are able to keep those laws that they're creating for these different worlds straight in their head. Do you have a technique that you use to help you kind of keep things straight? And did you ever get to the point where you were writing and you kind of established a law in chapter 1, and then in chapter 15, that law isn't very convenient right now, so I have to change things and go back and...
Absolutely, and I've learned that that's the problem with series, because you were maybe writing the second book and you're like, oh no, it has to go here, but then you're like, oh, I said this in book 1, so that doesn't work. So it definitely, I think, I've heard from other writers that there's 2 different ways of writing. I don't know if this is true. One is, to really map everything out. And another one is just kind of see where the story takes you. I'm of the later. For me, mapping things out kind of stifles me. I feel like I can't explore where things are going to go. So I definitely have written myself into corners that I had to back out of and figure out other ways. But I also think it's really important to maintain the rules that you created, because if stories don't make sense or if they get too out of control, then they don't hold together. Yeah, for sure.
Do you keep a journal or a map of all these different things so that you can remember, okay, I'm in chapter, what did I say about this in chapter 4?
I do, but honestly, most of it's in my head, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I kind of keep most of it in my head. Go back and check things here and there.
So now you're working on this great Magic Shoe series. Are there plans for additional books in this series or different series in the future?
So my first book came out in 2021. The second one is coming out in August of 2023. And I'm currently working on the third one. So I'm hoping it will reach its conclusion soon. And then, yeah, I definitely want to keep going with middle grade, probably up. I mean, this book is more upper middle grade, I would say. But keep going with new ideas, new worlds, new adventures, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, I know people would be upset if I didn't ask folks where we can go, since we're talking about a compass to Vinland, where people can go, where they can set their compass so that they can find out more about you on the web.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a website. It's daniresh.com, and I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, so you can definitely check me out there. I'm considering TikTok. I haven't went there yet, but I'm considering it.
Well, we're not going to encourage you either way on TikTok, but we are going to encourage everybody to check out Compass to Vinland, Clarity of Sight. It is part of the Magic Shoe series from our guest, Dani Resh. Hey, Dani, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. You don't want to miss it. What a fascinating guest. Max Brooks will be here. Max Brooks, New York Times best-selling author, member of the Brookings Institute, dad. he's going to be here to celebrate his brand new book. It's called The Village. It is an official Minecraft novel. This conversation is absolutely wonderful. You don't want to miss it. We talk, of course, about the book. We talk about Minecraft. We talk about education, how kids are learning, how we can support kids, how we can learn with our kids together. Don't miss it. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, let's take a moment to thank the folks who made today's episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Dani Resh. Please be sure to check out Compass to Vinland. Also want to thank our sponsors. Mysterious Book Number 1, Escape from Brimstone Manor by Matt McMahon. This is a fantastic book and a fantastic series. Also want to thank Giggles and Joy, the wonderful picture book series by Ariane de Bonvoisin. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Soji Franklin, and O'Leary. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.